Oh, come on, come on, come on. Lunge, lunge. That's better. Go on, keep it going. That's it. Well, I don't know much. In our day, we couldn't wait to get at the other fella. These chaps just lay back and fiddle.
Oh, they're not so bad, Hartnett.
Oh, excuse me. Can I help you?
Yes, is that the French team?
No, that's the English. French team hasn't arrived yet.
Will they be here soon?
Well, not for an hour or so.
I'll wait.
Well, I'm afraid you can't wait here, but why don't you come back tomorrow night for the match?
No, I'll wait outside.
Well, go on, get after him, dealers. Yes, and again. That's better. Come on, get after him. Now's your chance.
Touche.
He's improving, that bud.
You're too fast for me, Bob. You forgot to think.
Well, how was that, sir? Miserable. The Colonel here and I could beat you ourselves. We haven't been in competition for 20 years.
25?
You should give us a few points sometime, sir. Captain Hartnett says you were a wizard with a foil.
Oh, that was before you were born. Well, I must be off.
Come on. Carter, see what you can do with dealers.
Was he really that good, sir?
Best I've ever seen.
Oh, excuse me. Was he speaking the truth? That isn't the French team in there, is it?
Oh, no. They haven't arrived yet.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything that I can do?
No, thank you.
I could help, you know.
What do you mean? How could you help me?
By taking the gun that you have in your bag. It can only get you into trouble.
I don't know what you mean. I haven't
If you're going to carry a gun, you should have a leather bag. The gun you see is heavy and the outline shows through the cloth. Now, let me have it, please.
No.
Be better if you did.
Who are you?
Colonel March of Scotland Yard. The gun, please. That's better. Now, suppose we go to my office and we can have a little talk. I wonder if you'd care to tell me about him.
Right, I'll try. I met him on the Riviera last winter at the beach. Well, I suppose you could say he picked me up. You mustn't think that...
I never think when I'm listening.
Well, I was lonely. My husband had died 2 years ago and we'd had no children. There was nothing to keep me in England, so I traveled all over Europe. I suppose I thought that if I kept on the move, seeing new places, I'd forget how empty my life was. But one place was much like another until that morning I met him at the beach.
He spoke English?
No, at first he spoke French, but when he knew where I was from, then he spoke English, as well as he'd spoken French.
Sounds like a very accomplished young man.
Yes, he said he'd been educated in England, but was now learning to be an artist, though I never saw anything he did. But it didn't matter. In a fortnight, I was hopelessly in love.
Did he know that you had money?
Well, I like to think not at first, but... Yes, I'm afraid he always did, from the beginning.
Perhaps not.
Well, he must have known from my jewelry. I'm fond of pretty stones, and they cost a good deal.
How long had he known you before?
Before he left me. 4 weeks and 3 days. It was in the evening. In my room at the hotel. Before dinner. I watched him walk over to the dressing table. I loved to watch him move. He had such grace. But it was difficult for me to believe when he picked up my necklace and my rings and put them in his pocket. Quite calmly, just as if they were his. I said, "Pierre, what are you doing?" And he said... I shall never forget his voice as he said it. So matter-of-factly, he said, "I'm getting out. I've had enough." Of course, I didn't believe him. All I could fix on was the jewelry, and I said, "But the necklace," and he said, "That's for the time I spent on you." And then he walked out.
Did you go to the police?
I was too ashamed.
Did you ever see him again?
Yes, last week. I was at the Paris airport, and I saw these young men getting on a plane to London. One of them was Pierre, and I tried to run to him, but I was too late, and the plane took off. They told me that the men were fencers from France and England who had already competed in Europe and now were going to fence again here in London. I took the first plane to London and this morning went to the club.
But you weren't really going to shoot him.
What makes you say that?
Well, you just don't strike me as being the type.
If he had refused to come back to me, I might have killed myself. Am I that type?
Mrs. Pollard, I'm going to be brutally frank with you. You're behaving exactly like a young girl in the throes of her first love affair.
I know, and I'm ashamed.
You're a very attractive woman with every chance of a rich, full life ahead of you. Now, don't you think it's rather foolish to throw it all away on a worthless young man like that?
I don't know if he's worthless. I only know I'm in love with him, and for a while, I think he was in love with me.
Suppose I could prove to you that he's preyed on other women in much the same manner.
How could you know that?
I don't know it. But he sounds very much like a young man that the French police are looking for. Also a bit of a swordsman.
What did he do?
Well, his last escapade didn't end very well. As a matter of fact, it ended in the woman being strangled. Oh, Mrs. Pollard, this is Inspector Ames.
Mrs. Pollard.
I'll turn the theft of your jewels over to Inspector Ames.
That's not important.
Oh, but it is to us. Oh, Ames, I want to talk to Goron at the Sûreté.
Oh, very good, sir. Get me Monsieur Goron, please, at the Sûreté in
You've
Paris.
been very considerate.
Then perhaps you'll do me a favor. Come to the Salle d'Armes tonight at 9 o'clock. Inspector Ames and I will be there, and you can identify the young man.
Do I have to do that?
Of course you don't. It'd be a great help if you would.
All right, I'll come.
Thank you.
Monsieur Goron? Good afternoon. Colonel March would like to speak to you. Here he is, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Goron. March here. How would you like to hop a plane and come over and see us?
I love you, March. But England, the climate is bad, the food is worse, but your police methods that are... Huh? Well, that is different. A beautiful woman, that...
Splendid, Goron. See you in the morning, then. Ames, you'll take care of him, won't you? Well done. That boy's Olympic material, Ames. I wish he were English.
Even if he's a thief?
Do you think he's the one?
I've learned not to judge them by their looks. Do you remember the Brighton chopper? That one looked like a choir boy.
It's just what he turned out to be, too.
Your lady friend's late.
When she comes, I'll turn her over to you. The identification shouldn't be too difficult.
And what are you going to do?
Watch the fencing, of course.
Wait a minute. Didn't
What?
you say that she said he was an artist?
That's what he told her. Why?
Bonjour.
How do you do?
Do you do that often?
All the time. It is how I make my living.
Oh, you're a painter.
A commercial artist.
It's a nice sketch.
Yes, I think so.
Non, je vous dis... Ah, René, viens ici.
Excuse me.
Il a dit que...
The boy has talent.
And what direction?
I'm getting worried about Mrs. Pollard. Would you call the hotel and see if she's left?
Oh, Colonel, what about doing us a favor?
Why, yes, of course.
Referee the finals tomorrow night. As an old champion, it'd be a nice jest to the youngsters out there.
I'd be glad to.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, Hartnett.
Yeah.
What do you know about that lad? The one who sketches when he isn't fencing.
Oh, that's René Trenier. Quite a formidable chap.
Was he talking about me by any chance?
Oh, no. He's talking about the fellow you have to beat tomorrow night. Think you can beat him?
Fencing? I don't know. With women, Rennie puts us all in the shade. They practically mobbed him in the restaurant where we had dinner.
You know him?
Well, we've fenced together in various places.
Does he live in Paris?
I think he lives wherever the sun is.
Oh, excuse me.
afraid it's bad news, Colonel. They've just found her. Suicide.
What?
The usual thing. An empty bottle of sleeping capsules.
Oh, I've made a mistake, a terrible mistake.
But what could you have done?
Oh, I don't know, but it seems such a waste, that unhappy woman.
They've also found a bunch of newspaper clippings about a fencer. Who? René Trenier.
Possible.
Mr. Goron?
Good morning, Inspector.
Ah, there you are. Thank you. There's been a new development.
No, don't let us discuss these sort of things on an empty stomach. Sit down. No, please, sit down.
But you don't realize, Mr. Goron, it is no longer a simple case of suicide. The autopsy shows that the lady was murdered. And we shouldn't be losing time.
Are we losing time? While I finish my breakfast, we'll be thinking, huh?
While we're talking, a murderer's at large and may be making his getaway.
In any case, we cannot arrest him until we know who it is, n'est-ce pas?
We have a pretty good idea.
Last night you had a pretty good idea. She committed suicide.
And so did you.
Never for a moment.
Do you mean to say that you think from the start that it was a case of murder?
If you only had the slightest understanding of the feminine sex, my dear Inspector, then you would know that no woman kills herself over an affair of the heart without first putting on her best negligee, making up most beautifully, and then writing a tragic note to the man who has jilted her. That romantic type of woman always wants her young man to spend the rest of his life being repented, which of course he never is.
And I suppose you also know exactly what the autopsy showed of the way the crime was committed.
Since there were no marks on her body, I would guess she was killed by suffocation. And then, to make the theory of suicide more plausible, he probably forced some of the sleeping medicine down her throat. Correct?
And the murderer? Do you know that too?
There you and Marge are ahead of me. You have already decided, no?
It all points to René Trenier, the star of your fencing team.
Somehow, I don't know, the way the crime was committed, it lacked delicacy. No, it was more Anglo-Saxon. Besides, why didn't René remove the newspaper clippings if he wanted to stage a suicide?
Perhaps we better go down to the salle d'armes and ask him if you can drag yourself away from your bacon and egg.
My dear Inspector, I can see you're never happy unless you are arresting someone. But I warn you, if I starve of death, it'll be on your head.
But this is incredible. Not one of those chaps seemed to be at all the type to get mixed up in such a ghastly affair.
We'll soon find out if you just ask them to come in one at a time.
Well, what'll I tell them?
Well, nothing about the murder. Just say that someone's been robbed in their hotel and that we'd like to ask them a few questions.
You sure we shouldn't cancel this match tonight?
What, and deprive us of the pleasure of watching them? No, indeed.
Very well, I'll send them in.
Would you like to do the questioning?
No. I prefer to watch. I may learn something from your English methods. C'est pas confortable ici. Ça c'est mieux.
I am Charles Dubois. You wish to see me? About a robbery at the hotel?
Good morning, Mr. Dubois. Sit down, will you?
You?
Now, it doesn't really involve you, but we would like to know if you were in your hotel between 6 and 8 last night.
Yes, I was in the dining room, having my dinner.
Alone?
At the beginning, yes.
But not at the end.
No, I was with a lady.
Naturally.
Well, can you give me the lady's name?
I do not know it. Oh, yes, her first name was, I believe, Adrienne.
You didn't trouble to find out her surname?
No, she was not my type. I realized that before the suite arrived.
And you don't know where she's to be found?
Do you think that she committed the robbery?
It's possible, if she exists.
A ghost does not eat steak and kidney pie with such an appetite. May I go now?
Very well. Thank you.
It is difficult to questioning, eh? One gets such surprising answers.
Monsieur wishes? Ah, yes, come in. Your name is
Marcel Leclerc.
Ah, Mr. Leclerc. Now, Mr. Hartnett has given you the details, I suppose. We just want to know if you were with your friends in the hotel between 6 and 8 last night.
I was not in the hotel at that time.
You don't sound like a Frenchman. Sit down, will you? You are, aren't you?
Oh, yes, but my mother was an American. I spent most of my childhood in America.
But now you live in France. Where were you between 6 and 8 last night?
Does it matter, so long as I wasn't in the hotel?
I'm afraid it does.
Very well. I was taking a walk. I hadn't been back in London for some time, and I wanted to see it again. I had dinner by myself, in a place where no one knows me, and whose name and location I have since forgotten.
In other words,
I have no alibi for that period. None at all. May I be excused now?
You may. Well, what do you think?
My dear Ames, the innocent seldom have an alibi.
Oh, I don't know. His brazen denial of any alibi may be a very clever pose.
Only the police are as clever as that.
Oh, your name's René Trenier, isn't it?
Yes?
Oh, sit down, will you? Now, I just want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. And the main one of which is, where were you between 6 and 8 last night?
Having dinner?
Alone?
I was with one of your English team, Delius.
Mr. Delius would be able to confirm that, of course.
Naturally. This talk about a robbery, Inspector, this is not the truth.
Why shouldn't it be?
Well, the way Mr. Hartnett acted. All this questioning one at a time. Either the robbery concerns one of us, or there is something else.
We'll tell you that when the time arrives.
Monsieur Trenier,
Yes?
a woman by the name of Mrs. Pollard was found dead in one of the rooms of your hotel last night.
Yes, I read it in the papers. Suicide, was it not?
Were you by any chance acquainted with Mrs. Pollard?
Yes, I was.
Now I shall have to ask you a question which under ordinary circumstances may seem indelicate. How well did you know Mrs. Pollard?
Hardly at all. We had a mutual friend, and I met her once or twice through him.
Who was that mutual friend?
If you will pardon me, I would rather not say.
Why not?
Because he probably had nothing whatever to do with the suicide of this woman, and it would be unfair to involve him.
And if I tell you, Monsieur Trenier, that by refusing to divulge his name, you may be unfair to yourself?
I still refuse.
I think you'd better keep us informed where you're to be reached, in case we want to ask you any more questions.
Will I be allowed to take part in the match tonight?
We shall be interested in watching you.
Thank you.
One last thing. Is Delius in there?
He just finished practicing. He might be in the locker room.
We'd better get down there before that fellow can get a chance of talking to Delius.
Oh.
Did you see him again later?
Well, yes, didn't Rennie tell you? We had dinner together. I guess we left here about, 5:30.
Did you walk to the restaurant or did you take a taxi?
A taxi. We had some of our equipment along. It's rather heavy.
Can you tell me why you had dinner together? Are you old friends?
Well, acquaintances. I've fenced against Rennie in France a few times. He often looks me up when he's over here, and I do the same when I go over there.
Was it his idea to have dinner?
Tell you the truth, I can't remember. I called him or he called me.
Oh, please try and remember if you can, sir.
I called him, I think.
Now, try and remember carefully, Mr. Delius. Did you and Mr. Trenier come back here directly after dinner? In other words, were you with him all the time up to 8 o'clock?
Is it important?
Quite important.
Have you asked him?
I'm asking you.
Do I have to answer?
You don't have to answer anything without proper counsel, sir.
I'd rather not say any more until I know what it's all about, if you don't mind. I don't want to get anyone into trouble. I know from experience how innocent words and deeds can be twisted into incriminating and even criminal acts.
Oh, that's very fair of you, sir.
Can't you tell me what it is? Is it something to do with immigration? I won't tell anyone, of course.
It's murder.
Murder?
Goron, I thought that we agreed...
A moment. Will you tell us now, monsieur?
guess I'd better. Yes, he did leave me about 7:15. He said he had an appointment.
So you see, Colonel, Trenier's movements were not accounted for between 7:15 and 8:30. Besides, he lied in letting us believe that he was with Delius the whole time. I was for arresting him at once, but Mr. Goron objected. He said we didn't have enough evidence yet to pin it on the boy. I disapprove of Mr. Goron and his methods.
Well, naturally. You haven't exactly the Gallic temperament.
If you want my frank opinion, I think he's holding off Trenier until after the match, so that the French team can stand a better chance.
It's possible.
March, you haven't any real doubt about who did it, have you?
Well...
Because my mind is made up.
Oh, careful, Ames. If we jump the wrong way, that Frenchman will never let us hear the end of it. Well, I'd better get dressed.
Well, it's up to us, old boy. Marcel's just won his match for your team, so honours are even.
Yes.
Well, we usually wish each other luck, even though we don't exactly mean it.
What's the matter, Annie?
That woman was murdered, Martha Pollard. I just found out.
Well?
The police keep asking me questions.
What sort of questions?
Who was the friend who introduced us? Who was her lover?
And what do you tell them?
Nothing about him, yet.
But you're going to, is that it?
Delius, you did not do such a thing. You did not kill her.
I was just wondering the same thing about you.
Come on, you two. They're calling you for your match.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the final and decisive match, we have Monsieur Trenier representing the French team and Mr. Delius representing the English team. First 3 hits out of 5 to the winner. Are you ready, gentlemen? Swords in line. On guard. Play. Stop! After 20 seconds, the first hit scored by Monsieur Trenier. After parrying a lunge by Monsieur Trenier, Mr. Delius riposted, but Monsieur Trenier countered and scored his hit just above the heart. Change over, gentlemen. Swords in line. On guard. Play! Ladies and gentlemen, I award this match to Monsieur Trenier in the French team on a foul. And you, Robert Delius, I charge for the attempted murder of René Trenier and the murder of Martha Pollard.
Come along.
For an Englishman, you have a nice sense of the dramatic.
Try to put on a good show for our visiting friends.
Tell me, Marge, when did you know first it was Delius?
Well, he forgot that when he destroyed his friend's alibi, he also destroyed his own. And then, as you see, he tried to kill the one man who could prove him guilty, René Trenier. When did you know?
Did I say I knew?
Touché.
Thank you.